All right. Hello, everybody. My name's Alex Price. Some of you've probably worked with me in the past. To others, I might be a new face, but I'm here to wrap up what has been this retirement mini series, helping you kind of brainstorm about retirement topics, different things. Today, we're going to cover how to find a great place to retire for you. There's no blanket statement that we can throw for everybody and say this is going to be the state and the town and the neighborhood that you'll find most enjoyable, which tends to be the case for most financial questions, which is why you have us to answer those for you. So the goal today is not to tell you where to live, it's to give you the tools that you can implement for yourself, for your spouse, for your family, and make the best decision for you as to what to look for in a retirement destination. So to start out, I was sitting there thinking about how I wanted to organize my thoughts, and naturally I started making a list. I like lists. It's how I keep track of my tasks. If I work with you, chances are your name has crossed my task pad before, and I write down what I need to do and I cross it off. So I figured we'll put lists into this presentation as well. So, you start with, what is your dream retirement destination? What are the top priorities for you? And chances are you're not going to find a place that checks all of these boxes. If you do, fantastic, pack your bags and get there. But chances are there's going to be compromise along the way. So a couple items to think about here in the top section. What amenities would you like nearby to the house? So my hobby, I like golfing. So ideally there would be some sort of golf facility nearby where I could start playing a little bit more than I'm currently able to. And it would have to be in a relatively close distance. So I'm probably looking for that within a couple mile radius. I also like outdoors. So ideally there's a little bit of wooded area nearby. That's just my preference. Everyone has their own hobbies. My in-laws, they found themselves near a school in Delaware, and they ended up taking college courses. So I don't think they necessarily picked their spot because of the college, but it just worked out. So what are your hobbies? What are your interests? And is the spot you're looking for able to, continue and progress with your interests? Second one's a big one. What do you want the weather to be? So everybody's different. Everybody in this office is different. Some people only like the hot. Some people only like the cold. Some people can tolerate both, but they want to feel both of those things. They don't want to be in one of those single climate areas. So, which person do you fall into? We have clients that go down to Florida, and we have a client we're working with right now, and they're recently going up to upstate Michigan. So we got the north and the south covered, and everywhere in between. So, talk about that. What's your ideal weather situation, day to day, season to season? Third one here I put is, what would you want your house to look like? From the outside, but also in the inside. What floor plan are you looking for? Do you want a single story, something that you can, further your life stages into, where you don't have to worry about stairs or basements or steep walking areas? Do you want something you can retire in and feel comfortable and safe? Do you want somewhere with a guest space nearby to where your family can come down and visit? We'll talk a little bit about the qualitative aspects that you should be thinking about when picking somewhere. So what's your ideal house, floor plan, land lot? Do you want somewhere where the upkeep's going to be taken care of for you? Or do you enjoy doing that right now and you enjoy having a little bit of land? All things to start thinking about. And lastly, I put here, what vibe are you looking for? And I thought, culture, mood, vibe, I felt captured most of the feelings here. And you probably know what I mean by vibe. Every region has, the feeling. You go out to the store, there's a certain vibe at there. You go to the mall, you go to the movies, you're driving, the people on the road have a certain vibe. So, what fits well with you culturally, or just personality wise, what do you enjoy? And the bottom section here, you would think that this is a no-brainer, but I want to make sure everyone's aware. If you're married, there can be two lists. You guys don't have to have the same exact interest on everything. Each come up with your own. And I put compare, contrast, and compromise. Or maybe find somewhere that checks all the boxes for both of you. And if so, that's great. So start with the list. Start with your ideal goals of this place, and then kind of narrow in on the reality of the situation. So I broke this into two categories. We have the quantitative aspects and the qualitative aspects. So quantitative, the number, the financial, personalities of this area. Cost of living is a big one. Whatever state you're in, the cost of living is going to be a little bit different. Whether you go to the grocery store for, milk and cereal and chicken breasts, or you go to the gas station for gas, the pricing of all those things is going to be different depending on where you are in the US. There's a website you can go to at the end. I have a resources slide, and you can see what the cost of living in these areas are, as well as house prices. We know very well house prices change depending on where you go. My extended family is near Windber, Pennsylvania, and you look in the classified section for a house and you'd think you're buying a used car. It's just a different market, different pricing and everything that goes along with it. So what are the house prices in the areas that you're looking? Do they fit into your retirement plan? Do they not? Are changes going to have to be made leading up to then to make it work? All these things aren't set in stone. Next is the big one. Obviously, it's on everybody's mind when they're choosing a state, and that is the tax situation. So big one, state income tax. So Florida, South Dakota, Texas, Washington are a few states that do not have state income tax. It could be a positive for your situation. It is for a lot of people. We don't want taxes to dictate exactly where you're going to live. There's a balance that we'll talk about. But, that's something to think about, is no state income tax in certain states. There's around 8 or 9 other states on that list. I just didn't want to write them all down. If you're interested, that Kiplinger link at the bottom, you can click on a map, each individual state, and it will break down income tax, inheritance tax, estate tax, cigarette tax, gas prices, everything you could think of for every state in the country. So state income tax is a big one. Taxes on retirement income. So this is your pensions or your Social Security. Is a lot of your retirement made up using pension income? And if we really need to fine tune your plan and squeeze out as many tax benefits as we can, states like Pennsylvania could come into mind. Once again, we hope we don't have to decide where we're retiring strictly off taxes, but if both kind of check the box, then more power to us. Other taxes to think about: sales tax, property tax. If these states don't have income tax or retirement income tax, are they making up for it in other areas that you might not be thinking about? So you want to look at the whole tax world, not just those top 1 or 2. Estate and inheritance tax. Not going to get into the detail as to what those are. There is a webinar earlier that kind of touches on the difference between estate tax, inheritance tax, when those breakpoints are. If this is something that interests you, reach out to your advisor. More than happy to go through it. It can get a little complicated. So for a retirement living destination, I didn't want to bore it down with estate tax. But just know 33 states collect neither of those, estate or inheritance tax. Maryland decided to do both of them. So something to keep in mind if you want to stay here. And once again, there's that link for the state-by-state guide. You're going to find a bunch of maps out there. I found this is a pretty good one, as well as the links at the end of this, should kind of equip you with all the tools to look a little bit further into each state situation. So we got the quantitative side, and now we're going to look at the qualitative side. So what are the things that, might not be directly financially related, but it relates to a quality of life sort of viewpoint. Big one here, and I think it's very important within this firm. The firm's all about relationships. What's one of your greatest relationships? Your family. So what is the proximity to family that you would like to have? And if you go somewhere a little bit further away, maybe you're going to look to be next to an airport that flies, at least close by to where your family is, if they're in a different state. So everyone's different. Everyone has a different level of attachment to either kids or grandkids or great grandkids, grandparents, you never know. So what proximity to family do you want to have in your retirement? And along those lines, something else to think about proximity wise is the hospital or the healthcare nearby. So Where we are in Hunt Valley right now, obviously Hopkins is right down the street, pretty desirable hospital. A lot of specialists, a lot of specialty health areas there. Is the place you're going to near a top tier hospital? Does it have the special care that maybe you have a family history of? Is there a world countrywide known specialist there that you're really high on? Make sure that this is being taken into account. Don't just forget about the healthcare situation. We're all going to run into healthcare issues at some point, whether it be a cold or more serious. You want to make sure you're comfortable going with what's around you. Back to the climate, we don't want you to be miserable half the year because you're hot and you hate the hot and you didn't think about how hot it got in August. So think about that again. And population density. How busy do you want everywhere around you to be? Are you okay with driving and not seeing anybody on the road for miles, or do you like being able to walk to places? Do you like having a main street to walk down, go to little shops or restaurants, whatever you're interested in? And that's different for everybody too, population density. And then once again, back to that culture and vibe, you want to make sure, you like the area, you like the presence and the aura that it's bringing, because you're going to be there for probably at least a couple of decades. This was an interesting one here. We all go on vacations for the most part, maybe every other year or every year. And oftentimes we tend to find that one place that we really like going on vacation. For my family growing up, that was Myrtle Beach. So I have my parents and I have one sister. My mom and my sister can sit on the beach from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. straight reading a book, not moving. My dad and I are a little bit different. You can only get beat up by waves so many times before you need something else to do. And Myrtle Beach fit that because we both golf. So 2 days we could go out and golf, or, they have the big golf shops and you can walk around and try things out. So, but anyway, so that's one of our favorite vacation spots. And research and history has shown, ideal vacation spots don't always translate to the best retirement destination. Couple reasons for this. A lot of us have only gone on vacation for a week, so maybe we like the area for a week, but if we were there for a month or a year, we would find things that we don't like. And these areas are, they're designed for tourists. They're designed for people coming for that week or 2 weeks at a time, to where the amenities may not be as great as, a more established, less seasonal heavy place, shops, restaurants, whatever you may have. So if you find your vacation destination is your retirement spot, great. But we'll touch a little bit as to how to avoid, going somewhere and ultimately regretting your decision, or just not being as happy. So we made our list. We started brainstorming a couple areas to think about. So now we can refine that list a little bit here. Probably the easiest way to start is pick a region and then pick a state. Pick a state that fits the qualitative goals. So the family, the healthcare, the weather, the happiness, the qualitative, not the numbers. Pick an area that would make you qualitatively happy. And then look, all right, how does that compare to the quantitative side? What's the tax situation look like? What's the cost of living look like? What's the buying power of $100? Because that changes too. What's the house prices? So come up with those two sides, and maybe the quantitative isn't as appealing as that qualitative side. Look into the trade-off. Is it worth, a little bit of a higher tax burden to check all the other boxes? Chances are, if you're making this decision, you're not having to get down to the percent tax bracket to make your retirement work. So the trade-off might be there. It might be worth prioritizing the qualitative over the quantitative. Test drive. So I talked about how do you avoid going somewhere and finding out that you don't like it. Maybe, in my head, I thought Myrtle Beach is going to be great. I could spend 20 years there and not get tired of it. Well, ultimately, we could even only do 7 or 8 years of vacation there to where we're going somewhere else this year. So test drive, spend a few weeks living in the area before you decide where to go. So travel down there, stay in an Airbnb or a hotel, or other rentable areas. Airbnb is probably the best, so you get a real house vibe. And if your budget and your vacation time, if you're still working, allows it, try to break that up amongst the year. Don't just go in the middle of summer to a beach destination, because chances are it's going to be a little bit different in the off seasons, and in January and in October it's going to be slightly different. So try to get down there different times of the year. Make sure you're getting the full picture of what that area has to offer. What's the daily traffic? If someone, let's say they're from the West, they decide to retire outside of Baltimore, they love Hunt Valley, they like horse farms, and then they realize they have to deal with 695 all the time. They never thought about the traffic in the mornings and the afternoons and dealing with that because they never did this test drive. How busy are the roads? How crowded are the restaurants, the grocery stores? What are the gas station prices throughout? I call it Sunday morning Safeway. So everyone knows, if you've done grocery shopping, midday on, or even early on the weekends, usually not the most ideal. I tend to be a little less patient in those stores when I'm crowded by everybody walking around and bumping in with carts. So we go very, very early, but that's an aspect into the stores in the area that you're going to be living. Is it always like that? Is it that busy to where that's just a constant factor? Or are there slow times to where you can go out and enjoy yourself as well? So back to the list, how did the areas you visited compare to your original list? Are there boxes that you thought you needed checked and you find out that you don't need those amenities, or you don't need to worry about your location to a store or grocery store? Or are there things that you didn't even think about that you found out would be very important to you while on these test drives? Beach and seasonal changes. I just think that's what I always go back to, because it's going to be a completely different atmosphere if you're by the beach during the summer and outside of it. Even Delaware, a lot of people retiring there near Lewis, and the beach there's the outlets and the restaurants. And during the summer, everything's parking metered, and you really can't find a parking spot. So they have shuttles that take you down there. During the off season, the parking meters get covered and you can basically park wherever you want. So if you were to visit one of those times and not the other, you're missing out on a whole lot of that experience. And then once you've kind of found an area, and in a smaller concentrated area, you can really drill down on some of the important numbers, like the house cost, the health care, go back to your family and your general overall happiness. Some websites allow you to see kind of like economic trends. What is the relative house pricing over the last 10 years? Is it trending up? Is it trending down? That can be an indicator on kind of the direction of the town you're looking at as well. Like I mentioned, there's some sources here. There's a Kiplinger tool, and there's also surveys that will ask you questions. The top one, the Market Watch one, is a little bit more detailed. It's going to take a little bit more of your time, maybe a little bit more thought, and that can lead you in a good general direction if you really just don't know where to begin. And then there's also the Zillow link there is a lot simpler. Drew and I have gone through both of these, and they produce good results, and they tell you good things. And if you are starting at zero and you need a couple areas on your list, those are great places to start. So that wraps up the presentation. I hope you guys at least thought about some things that you haven't before. And if you ever want to have further discussion, your relationship manager's here for you. Drew and the team are ready to help you find somewhere to go and begin thinking about. So thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the retirement mini series, and stay tuned for what the next education topic is going to be. Thanks.